Hey, 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 I'm Kimberly Smith Austin. I want to welcome you back to another episode of the Made to Inspire podcast. I am here today with my awesome and amazing co host, Misty Kerrigan. Hey, Misty.
Hey, Kimberly, how are you doing on this fine Monday?
Super fantastic. Misty, it is October. And you know, October, number one, is my birthday month. So I absolutely love October. And I go pink in October. So here we are celebrating a great month.
Absolutely. And one of the things that we are continuing from last week is how do we, as CEOs, entrepreneurs, emerging leaders, really start to get this fourth quarter into place? October 1st also marked the first day of the fourth quarter, if you're paying attention.
It's Q4, baby. It is the final the final round, your final chance to really build your business, build your organization to the place that you want it to be. And guess what? We have 90 days to do it. Yep, 90 days. And I know for some 90 days seems like a short amount of time, but 90 days is a lot. Remember, the earth was created, the world was created in 7. So imagine what you can do in 90.
That's very true. Also, what we wanted to do was while people are out running around trying to create numbers, we want to make sure that you have your foundation in place because everything you create, I think there's a Bible verse. If you build it on the sand, it will disintegrate, it will go away. But if you build it on the rocks, that's where the structure stays. And what are some of the rocks that you need to build it on? Well, one of the most important parts, whether you're one or many, is your culture.
That's right. That is everything, and I love this because when you think about culture, and that word is used, we use it to describe who we are. Sometimes people mistake culture from race, but it's looking at some core things. And let's talk about what that is. Culture is beliefs, it's values, it's mindsets, it's practices of a particular group. And it also includes things like behavior patterns and norms of the group, the rules, the regulations, all of that fun stuff. So when you think about culture, I want you to think about that. Think about the attitudes, the behaviors, what makes up your work environment. Even if you're a solopreneur and it's just you,
Mm.
what culture are you adhering to and abiding to? It should be about the experiences people have when they come to work with you, for you, or alongside you. You want to create something that is a signature of who you are as an entity. And I say entity because I don't want to make it just a one person shop, an entity, because that's who you are. Culture is what creates the day to day experience in your company.
And that day-to-day experience impacts and affects your customers. So culture just isn't about how you as a team work together. It truly is your brand, how that is given to the world and how the world experiences it back, especially in the 2020s. Culture used to be very much the business sets it and the customer appreciates it. But this whole switch is those customers, they go out looking for what they want and they will leave a company like that if that culture is not aligned with who they are and what they're looking for. So, more than any time in history, culture is one of the most important things that's going to be between you and success because the next generations, these zennials coming up, whew, they will real quick switch your culture. If you don't do it, they will do it publicly for you.
Yes, that's so good. And we see a difference in that. We think about people who worked in the 1950s to people who worked in the 1970s and the 2000s, and now we're in the 2020s. It's a different ball game. So I think about a couple things that are common when we think about cultures, common characteristics, if you will. It's learned, right? It's
Mm.
shared. It's based on symbols. It's integrated and it's dynamic. So when you think about that, I'm going to repeat that. It's learned, it's shared, it's based on symbols, it's integrated, and it's dynamic. So your culture, it's all of those things, but you build it. It doesn't happen by chance. And some organizations do find that even though they build a culture, once they get into the midst of working and creating and serving, it does evolve, right? It's dynamic, it evolves, and sometimes it's shaped by the people that are inside of the organization. So when you think about that aspect of how to build your culture, and that's what we're going to talk about today, how to build a culture that works, how to build a culture that lasts, how to build a culture that makes an impact, because that's really what matters.
Culture can also inspire you and your team members to kind of take that extra step, to go that extra mile, and to really make that experience for that customer. When I think of culture, I think of Disney, and
Mm,
how their culture is really set on every day is a miracle, and making a miracle, creating a miracle for every single guest. Even the way their trash cans are set up throughout the thing, all the way down to how you're greeted, and the things at each level of Disney that you're interacting with, is all based on culture.
that's it. I love that because that's what people come to expect, right? We may not write our culture is dot, 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 dot. But when people come to interact with your organization, there are some things, there are expectations that they look for. And based on what you've created, that's what they're going to expect. I think about something in my wellness practice, particularly the running side of the business. One of the things I talk about is we get in the trenches with you. So, what I believe is, I see people when they come to the organizations, we have a philosophy that no person is left behind. So, we're all running, and someone lags behind. We're going to go back and get that person. Now, many people initially, it really is kind of intimidating. It's really embarrassing for some people. But once we explain, this is how we operate, this is what matters to us. We don't want you to do it alone. We want to come alongside you on the journey. That is a culture we built. We get in the trenches. We don't just stand on the side and say, go left, turn right, run fast, run slow. We do it with you. We show you what our organization is all about. And so that's what I think happens with Disney, with Netflix, with Amazon, all of these companies. As they build a culture, the people come to expect it and they look for it when they do business with them.
I love that. The other thing about a culture is, and we've seen this before when we go coaching, is the word. I'm gonna give you a specific experience. We go to a local restaurant and the service is horrible most of the time, but it's close to my house and it's convenient. And if we sit at the bar, we get better service. We made a great relationship with one of the bartenders, and she's a phenomenal. But one day I was looking over and I was reading, their computer screen was on timeout, and it kept flashing these words and these values and this mission. And I hit my fiance, and we were laughing because none of the service aligns with what that computer says. And
Mm,
that was the joke. And when she asked me, she's like, why do you think that is? I go, the lady told us last week, she said, none of the management enforces anything.
right.
So you could have words and it could be on walls, and corporate may be thinking like, oh, we're killing it. But unless you have that, it's stripped down every level and that it's upheld, then you have fancy words that none of the employees or team members are executing out on your main field there.
That's right. It's that whole concept of talking the talk, but not walking the walk. And I think that's important in our culture, hint, hint, meaning US culture, business culture, our where we are today. It's common in our culture that people are notorious for talking the talk, but not walking the walk. And if you want to see an organization that's changing the world, their words match their actions.
Mm.
That is super important. Their talk and their walk are in alignment and they match. That's why they have tremendous success. So to say, that we value our customers or customers first, but when you go into that organization and you're like, hello, hi, do you see me? The clerk, the assistant, the person at the front desk is having a conversation on the phone, sitting right in front of you, and they never acknowledge you. You know that that is not something that is really, truly actively lived out inside of that organization.
I loved how you said that, lived out. And I'm telling you, this is the time. If your culture is not where it needs to be, you're in a perfect alignment with, well, what do we do and how do we get it to where it needs to be? Because you still have time to evolve it and change
That's
with
right.
it and hit it to where maybe the vision in your head is not where the application is. And that happens. When we go from one to many, we start duplicating, and some people duplicate scale really fast. Unfortunately, what they lose is that vision of the culture and where they want it to be, because you're hiring and you're moving and you're hiring and you're moving, that you forget to kind of take that time and see how everything is impactful. So
Yeah.
stopping, or even if you haven't got it, if it's just you and you're like, Misty and Kimberly, why do I need a culture? If it's just me, you could actually set up a culture that's going to even help you to be motivated and more invested, even if you're by yourself right now.
That's right. That's right. And treat yourself, Mr., Mrs., if it means, turning and having a third party conversation with yourself and starting now, because that's where it starts. You're the leader. You're sitting at the top, at the helm of the organization. And we know everything trickles down, right? And then our hope is that as it trickles down, it then trickles up, because our employees, our staff, the people who come with us, they then carry that vision. I love working with organizations where employees carry the vision.
Mm.
They see the culture, they understand it, and they become the culture. It's not just talk or words on a wall, it's really what they become. In fact, I know a situation where a young lady carried the company's culture to heart, and everything that she did was reflective of that. Unfortunately, she brought it with negative energy. And although customers was first, she showed that. And although the company wanted to make sure that their product was superior and that they gave full explanation and education, she did that. But at some point in time, her ownership of the culture became where it was almost like, I owned it and you can't mess with it. It became a threat. And unfortunately, she lost her job because customers then felt threatened by her, not embraced by her. Like, I knew her heart wanted, she just didn't know how to really bring that to life. And I think with some leadership training from the leaders at the top, really helping her understand and see that, could have helped her transition into that role and really support the culture much better by knowing what the overall vision was.
Mm, that's good. So, what are some steps if you need to pause and really take an account, or if you're looking at us like, you're right, I'm going to start today? What are the three things that you can do to start building this foundation out of something solid, so that you could scale without worrying about anything at the bottom taking you out later on?
Well, Missy, let's start with first, I guess, taking the time to define the values. What's important to you? What matters to you in your organization? What do you want to be known for? How do you want to operate? Because
Mm,
all of that takes place, right? You have to emphasize, in my opinion, the caring and the order, which encourages a work environment where teamwork, trust, and respect are paramount. So, thinking about that, what are our values? What are our standards? What's the language that we want to use throughout the organization, so that as we go in front of our audience, our clients, that we're consistent, that we are congruent, and that we align?
I love that. So, taking time to define your values. And number two is really taking that time for the language. What's the common language? What's the values and standards? And we always teach, don't make it overcomplicated. Don't make it overcomplicated. It could be simplistic language, can go very, very far, because you want this to be your message to be communicated on. The best thing that could happen to your message is if your culture sets it with your customer, and your customer's able to communicate it to someone they're referring, why they love this place, why they think you should do business with this place, because your culture is then able to be communicated, because it's not over jargoned. And sometimes with over jargoned you lose meaning, but it just very is simplistic of what it is that you're going after and how you're getting it. Very common languages, and then the values and the standards to uphold that language throughout every aspect of the company.
I love that. And when you say language, simple language is important. I know over the years, especially, as a professor sitting in the classroom teaching students about what they say, the words they choose, one of the common things that I've taught is keeping things simple enough that an eighth grader with
Mm,
very minimal education could understand it. When you keep it simple, you don't create confusion, you don't create people doing things differently because they interpreted the wording, the language differently. So keep it where even at eighth grade level, you can comprehend it and move into action with that culture.
Ooh, that is good. I like that. What's number 3?
Well, number three is, I think, really one of the most important ones is be truthful
Mm,
and always communicate your expectations. When you're building a culture, you want to build a culture of trust. You want to build a culture where people can communicate, where people can actually respect one another. And most of all, they operate as a team. Again, we talked about you may be a party of one, you may be a party of five, but when you have communication, trust, respect, honor on the table, guess what? You get a healthy organization. And I know that's what every person in the world strives for. Entrepreneur, emerging leader, executive, whatever you station you sit in today, that would be the goal. And in order to do that, trust, honesty, respect, and communication. Set that expectation early and
mm.
set it often. Remind your people. See, culture is not just something you talk about, culture is something that lived out. In fact, Misty, I know before the call, we talked a little bit about your company, Oak Grove, and how Oak Grove builds the culture into their day-to-day practice. Can you share a little bit about that?
So we took a training in leadership and it said you can't just have words. So if we have the values, how are those values shown and said every single day? So what we do is we have the values are awards we give weekly, monthly, yearly are our value awards are given out. We also have communication and set standards weekly. Every department in the organization meets weekly to discuss where we're at, where we're going, and how we're getting there. The other thing that we do with the values is making them fun. We also have them in our evaluations. We're evaluated through each, we have 10 values, and each of those 10 are broken up and are evaluated on how we're utilizing those in our role, no matter from CEO all the way down to if we're in charge of ensuring that our environment is safe. So the values are always with us in a daily, weekly, monthly, yearly, quarterly sort of thing. And we base conversations around them. So when I bring an employee in for coaching or a team member in for coaching or for they didn't hit quite the standard, it starts with that value. So one of the values we have is integrity. So we would start that if something was out of integrity, we would sit down with the employee and be like, okay, so one of our highest values is integrity, which means everything is transparent. This last thing happened and it didn't seem that integrity was in place. What was wrong? What could we have done better? So really just having that everyday language based upon the 10 values.
That's amazing because you know what happens with that, Misty? You can't lose sight of it. You don't lose sight of it because it's there. You're surrounding it all around. And I know our next show is going to be all about that, how to put in execution and the experience, because now you've built the culture into your practice, your evaluations, your conversations, your every aspect of it. And that is the truest sense. So as you build your culture, remember that. Remember and think about how you can incorporate that in every aspect of the company so that it's not something just words on a wall. Instead, it's principles that are actually implemented on a regular and consistent basis.
One of
That's
the
powerful.
best culture things I ever heard of was I want to say it was the Ritz Carlton when they were interviewing one of the I think he made the coffee, and he said that the managers all stop and ask him if he's okay and if he needs anything and how they can support him, and he feels supported in the culture. Not that if he's doing anything wrong, because he works at another organization where he feels like he's doing something wrong because it feels like they're always telling him what to do and what he could have done better. So having that culture of all the managers, no matter what, are walking up to every employee and asked how they're doing and how they could be more supported. Now that
I
is
love
a
that.
amazing culture. And that's a culture
Love,
people
love,
want to
love that.
be in and be around.
That's beautiful. That's exactly right. So, with that, we want to encourage you to remember that as you build your very culture, as you build your organization to that next level. Trust, honesty, respect, include them all. And as we say every single week, remember, there is something out there waiting for you. Now
Now
go get it.
go get it. We have a culture, I say at the end of it, and I say, now go get it.
I know I messed that one up, huh?
We also have a culture of growth. And so we're going to do it again.
Yeah. Stop that record.
Where is it?